There we go. Looks like we're live. Give it a few seconds for people to join and everything, but I'll just start getting into it a little bit. Just wanted to thank everyone for the support for Sunday's show and the support for my last video, just in general for the show where I talked about the Raiders. It's one of my highest viewed videos of all time as well, so definitely appreciate it from you guys. And I got to thank Jose. He's the one who lets me use this thing called StreamYard so I can stream from Facebook and Twitter at the same time. It's been an awesome tool. Yeah, so if you guys watched the last episode on Sunday for Out of Line, there's obviously a few technical difficulties. I was trying to transition, and we obviously forgot our passes to get into the studio, so didn't have as much time for setup as I thought we would. But personally, I liked it. It seemed like you guys did too. Everyone gets their own face cam. Bringing another form of technology with me too on the next time we have a show. That way, Bags will have his own camera, and the sound will be much better. I'm going to try to link the Las Vegas websites, like live streaming, so the audio comes straight from there. But if not, I have my own studio microphone that I use for these videos, so one way or another, audio will be better. But otherwise, if you guys want to re-listen to the show, if there is another technical difficulty or whatever, you can go to our YouTube page. As soon as I get after the show, I go home and I edit the video with the professional audio included, so it should be better in that case. So yeah, those are the part of the future plans. I'll have it. The show will also be streaming from now on from Facebook and Twitter at the same time. I wasn't sure how I was going to do that before, but obviously now with this website, things are much better. So I hope you guys like that. And yeah, like I mentioned, since I've been on the show, that last Sunday was the highest viewed episode of all time, which is crazy. I know everyone's excited for sports to come back, and I am too, obviously, to get back to work. As you guys know, I was a sports writer and stuff, and obviously I work for the show too. So that's always a good thing. And as always, I don't know where you're viewing this from, but you can find us on Facebook, Out of Line Las Vegas. We're like the top result. On Twitter, it'll be streaming from my Twitter name, and I'll be retweeting it from the Out of Line page. But the Out of Line Twitter and Instagram handles are at Out of Line Fox LV, and then you can see my own personal right here at Spencer the Wiz. And then I have my own personal sports page, which I'll probably also be retweeting this from, which is at Delivering Sport. I'm unfortunately one character too long for Twitter, but it's at Delivering Sport on Twitter for that. Anyways, unless anyone's got any comments, and if you do, I'll probably pop them up on the page. I'll get right into it for the top 5 strangest draft picks from the 2020 NFL Draft. Minimum. I didn't want to go too far. I personally scouted pretty much for the whole draft, maybe until comfortably round 5, and then I just knew a few names for round 6 and 7. But I did some pretty genuine looking into players just to see who the Raiders would be picking. But for the purpose of this one, I just went first 2 rounds because most people would know the names from those. And if you guys really want to see me go from rounds 3 to 7, I can also do that. I have plenty of picks I can choose that I thought were strange from there. Maybe if I get like 5 likes or something on this video, that way I know there is some sort of genuine interest. I'll go ahead and do that. But for now, let's get into it. This one probably won't be too much of a surprise for you guys. Certainly one of the more frustrating if you're a Green Bay fan. In round 2 or pick 62, the Packers selected running back A.J. Dillon. 2019 stats, 1,880 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5.3 yards per carry. Now, I'm not saying he had a bad year at college. There's no doubt. I mean, that would be stupid of me to say, but for the Packers to pick someone else in the first round to talk about, and then you think, okay, now is the time to kind of address that need for the Packers here. And especially for a team that has a pretty well-rounded running back in Aaron Jones. So you have to imagine that he's going to be playing backup third down primarily, and certainly that can translate to helping Aaron Rodgers on some level. But it just felt like there were more people there in that spot that could have helped him immediately. For example, sure, would it have been in reach to take Bryan Edwards, or the Raiders taken at 81? maybe. But don't you think the Packers need to stretch just a little bit to really help him out for this going for a Super Bowl run? Got a guy who can play on the outside, who is a big frame, he can go downfield. You know, you have you have the guy who can play the slant and play it really well, who's a mismatch. So if you have someone who can take it over the top and really go farther than that, you would imagine that Aaron Rodgers would be happy about that kind of pick, even if he necessarily shouldn't have been a second round pick. But this pick was so late in the second round, it was almost a third round pick. So I don't think any Packers fan necessarily would have been upset about that. Other names that I think could have been a better impact for them in year one: Logan Wilson. I was a big fan of Julian Okwara. I didn't know how he fell to the third round, to be honest with you. Uh, Another name, Zach Bond. So a pretty perplexing pick for a guy who isn't going to be their every down back, at least not to my knowledge, unless they make a trade. Aaron Jones for someone, but the value of running backs, as we know, just doesn't really mean anything at all anymore. I don't know what you would possibly get. Like, I don't even know what you would get from like Melvin Gordon. Think about it. The Chargers were talking about trading him for an entire year. And I would imagine the highest pick they probably got was a fourth or a third rounder. And I guess that wasn't enough for the Chargers. Anyways, on to number 4. The Bears in the second round, pick 43, took Cole Kmet. 2019 stats: 515 yards, 6 touchdowns, 12.0 yards per reception. Now, I'm certainly not saying that he isn't the best tight end in the draft. He is, without a doubt. But you also have a Bears team that didn't make the playoffs last year. This was their first pick in the draft. And they had just paid Jimmy Graham a bunch of money, or overpaid him, honestly. But still, they kind of had their starting tight end. And you're also talking about a Bears team that has, I think, 10 tight ends on the roster, or something, 8, like a ridiculous amount, like the max number you would possibly have on your roster. So to add another one makes very little sense to me. Certainly, I guess, I'm assuming Nick Foles is going to be starting week 1, and he likes his tight ends because he had one with the Eagles for so long. I guess that's fine. It just, again, it really encapsulates what this whole video is about. It's just a strange pick. Certainly not where anyone would expect him to go, because tight end was not their biggest need. Outside of quarterback, you could argue receiver or something like that, or maybe even a running back. Maybe they could have taken A.J. Dillon, but they did what they did, and I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that pick, to be honest with you. Number 3 came in the first row. If you want a more in depth, you can go to my YouTube page, Delivering Sports, or it's on the Out of Line Facebook page as well. The Raiders picked up Damon Arnett, the backup corner for Ohio State, the super senior who just finished his 5th year. Only 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, and 8 passes defended in 2019. And normally it's okay for a first-round pick because they're not going to his side of the ball so much, but we know that's not the case because Jeffrey Okudah was the definitive number 1 cornerback over there. Obviously, he went number 2 overall. This is a guy with a questionable motor, not particularly like touted as the best cover guy in the draft. And yet the Raiders really forced themselves into a weird spot, knowing that there were a lot of great players there who are going to just straight up be better. If you kind of understand what I'm saying. Patrick McQueen was still on the board, and I know they picked up Kiewatowski and Corey Littleton, but you still have a third linebacker spot that is in desperate need. I don't think Markel Lee or Nicholas Morrow are going to be effective players of that position. So you get Patrick Queen, you have 3 linebackers that are definitely great at defending the pass, which is something they need. And I do understand that cornerback is their weak position. You still have Logan Ryan out there, by the way. That should be noted. And later in the draft, obviously, they took Amik Robinson, who I think can be played week 1 as well. They certainly reached, and a lot of teams didn't even have on their draft board. So why not trade back from this position at pick 19 and get him in the 2nd or 3rd round if you're really if this is the guy that you circled on your board and this was the guy, which I really don't think it would be. So I just wasn't a big fan of this pick at all. This is probably not surprising to anyone, and the more I've thought about this, the more I'm uh, kind of on the line for this. But round two, pick 53, the Eagles surprisingly took quarterback Jalen Hurts. 2019 stats are pretty crazy. Obviously, he was a Heisman kind of guy. 3,851 yards passing, 1,323 yards rushing, and 28 total touchdowns. I think 21 of them are rushing, which is something crazy. Look, I know it is strange, and I know Eagle fans are obviously quite upset with the pick, but how much do you honestly expect out of your second rounder? Who were they going to take like other than this? And Jalen or Carson Wentz is good for an injury, like regardless. Every year he does go down. This is something we know. And I mean, okay, let's look at the alternatives who they could have taken. AJ Appentia was still there, which is absolutely insane. And the fact that Buffalo got him at 54 is some sort of crime, if you ask me. Van Jefferson was still there. So if you want another receiver or Denzel Mims, even Josh Uche, I don't even know how to say his name. New England ended up trading up for him. Or Christian Fulton, another cornerback, but they did trade for Darius Slay, and I believe they got Roby too. So, the Eagles, all in all, had probably the best offseason for that division, except maybe the Cowboys, you could say, who got CeeDee Lamb in the draft very luckily. Again, I wouldn't put too much stock in it. That, having a backup tight end and having a guy like Peterson, who is your coach, who is good with players like that, is probably a good thing. I just wanted to put this in the video because I know it's controversial. So if you guys have any thoughts on Jalen Hurts, I would love to hear it in the comments. I do like getting into it with you guys, as I have before. So I'm kind of a fan of this pick, to be honest with you. And just a couple honorable mentions. Where I just kind of was tossing up here. Round one, pick 9, the Jaguars took C.J. Henderson. Not to say that C.J. Henderson wasn't one of the best cover guys in the draft, but he has a really bad tackling problem, and to take a guy like that in the top 10 is kind of questionable. I was very surprised. Obviously, if you guys saw my final mock draft before the draft started, I had them trading up to take a quarterback. I had him going up to take Herbert. And when I didn't, I thought, okay, well, there's no one at 9 really worth taking what they need. So why not trade back for a team that undoubtedly wanted the 9th pick aggressively? Why not take something like that, go back to the 15th spot where CJ. But all in all, I mean, you end up with the Kevon Chastain and CJ Henderson in the first round. How really upset can you be? I think those are two really great picks. So they're having one of the craziest downfalls, but they're still accumulating some of the best assets in the league. It's a very weird juxtaposition. I might end up doing a video separately on Jacksonville, actually, because their team it's a tale of two halves, really, or two stories even. Like there's two completely separate things going on with the team. It seems like they're in turmoil, but then when you go down the list like one for one and look at what they're building, it's pretty good by most standards. So they're one of my most intriguing teams to watch next year. And then also in round one, pick 27, the Seahawks took linebacker Jordan Brooks. It was just not on my radar for round one, first of all. And the fact that Patrick Queen was still on the board, who the Ravens ended up taking right after, it was. Look, Seahawks have a very good track record of taking linebackers, so I'm not going to be the first one to tell them that they're dumb and wrong. Just kind of put me off in a strange way. I didn't think he should have gone in the first round, especially not with a guy like Patrick McQueen still on the board. But we'll see about that one. Hopefully, they may prove me wrong, and I tend to bet on the side that they would. And without a doubt, the Packers make their second strange pick of the first two rounds. Obviously, this is the one that everyone's going to talk about. I figured I'd get my 2 cents on it as well. They took Packers, I believe, traded up, if I'm not mistaken. They traded up to take Jordan Love. 2019 stats: 3,402 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions, which was the big story of his his senior season. Excuse me. Should the Packers have just taken T. Higgins or Michael Pittman here? Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, yes. And I know this is the exact same thing that happened with Brett Favre, where they took a quarterback in the first round, which was obviously Aaron Rodgers, and it worked out for them. They won a Super Bowl. Now, do I personally think that Jordan Love is on the same talent level as Aaron Rodgers? No, I do not necessarily. You're one game away from the Super Bowl last year. So why not really try to get a player of need in the first round? Theoretically, if you wanted to trade up or whatever, you can do that in the second round. If you're going down the list of teams, which I'll do right now with you guys, next was the Vikings, next was the Chiefs, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and then Detroit. So at pick 35, that's when you start thinking, okay, Jordan Love might get taken. So you want to trade up from the second round where you think that because they end up taking AJ Dillon, obviously, who's probably not who they wanted in the first place. So why not give up two assets, like maybe a third and a fifth round pick, trade up, maybe a third and a fourth, who knows? And you take your guy from Detroit who might have looked at Jordan Love at that spot. And then, everyone still criticizes you, but at least you still gave a weapon, which was the number one team need, to Aaron Rodgers. And then you can still get your backup quarterback or whatever if that's really what you want for your young guy. And it's someone who they really liked. There's no risk for like 6 picks before this happens. And then you have the whole night to get a deal done with Detroit. That's about all I have to say. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Jordan Love just in the first place. So if you guys think this was a smart pick and they're really going to just usher in the next, generation, just like they did with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, let me know. And I would love to know what you guys think about what the relationship between the two is like. Did Aaron Rodgers learn from his time from Brett Favre to not be cold, or is he going to give him the same treatment, in the hopes that he learns his lesson just like he did? It's interesting to think about at the very least. So let me know what you guys think about that. And I'm sure at some point we'll be talking about it on Out of Line as well. But again, we only have an hour show, so I usually don't have time to fully give out these thoughts on, live on the air. Just we're so crunched for time. And again, thank you guys for all the support for the show. It's been a really great last week, and definitely check us out on YouTube. I reposted the audio, and if you guys are just interested in the interviews from the show, I also cut those out. I just put them on YouTube, and I usually put the links for those on Facebook as well if that's your primary thing. You won't have to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you really don't want. You'll usually just find it on your timeline on Facebook, or I'll post it on Twitter as well, whatever you guys watch it through. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.